We're bang on. Morena koutou. Welcome to the Annual Plan Council meeting after all the work we've been doing on it. I would like to ask Tame to open us with a karakia, please. Thank you.
Morena everyone on this lovely sunny day. It was so good to get up with a bit of warmth. I had to open my curtains to warm my house up because she was so cold. But another point I just want to make too before I do the karakia. I congratulated Otorohanga District Council yesterday morning, Monday morning, because I did a presentation and they gave me 15 minutes. I said, Hamilton, I think they give us 5 minutes. Lovely to be here. E te atua kaharawa koe nei mātou e whakawhetai ki a koe kia uia tō aroha I rungi te iti me te rahi. Arahi mātou I rungi te tika me te pono ke kore ko titi I roto I tēnei ao huriuri. Nā ki tia te kengi hoki e tui tui e whakakotai te iwi, te miro mā, te miro whero, te miro tongo. Nā ki tia tala anu kāhui o kirikiri roa, ngā kai kauni hera o kirikiri roa, ngā kai mahi o te taone o kirikiri roa. E te atua koe nei mātou a whakawhetai I rungi tō ingoa. Āwhina mātou, ia miniti, ia rā, ia wiki, ia marama, ia tau. Koe nei mātou a whakawhetai I rungi te ingoa tō mātou kai whakaora. Moa te ake. Amen. Thank you everyone. Have a great day. Tēnā koutou.
Okay, councillors, I just want to start by saying, just shut my agenda down, sorry. I just want to start by thanking a group of councillors for the work that they've done to coalesce some of the thinking. So Ewan, thank you very much for instigating that conversation. And I think as a consequence, we'll have a reasonably seamless move through some topics that we've discussed at length anyhow. Obviously, it's fair and reasonable for you to ask all your questions because, you know, this is one of the important decisions that we make in setting the rates for this year. We'll just want to step through, if I may, before I go into moving the agenda and so forth, a plan for dealing with the items. You will see that the report has staff recommendations. And as I have noted, Councillor Wilson and a number of other councillors have been working collegially to work through some of the issues to bring a set of recommendations. As you're aware, some of those with sensitive contract elements will be dealt with in public excluded. So we are going to jump around a weeny bit, which I know is unhelpful for other people observing, but it's just the way we have to do. So what I'm proposing to do, and you can suggest something different if this doesn't work, is to open the meeting with everything that's in the open, and we'll have a good round discussion about that block of staff, of course, will step through their report, and then we'll have a good amount of discussion, questioning around those items, including comparing the staff recommendations with the recommendations of Councillor Wilson and Councillor Pike. So we'll put those out there for questions. Before we decide upon those, though, we'll then move into public excluded, have the discussion on those limited number, and there's a very small number, as you know, of items in public excluded, and we'll make the decision on the public excluded items, and then come back into the overall. I think that might work better than going in and out too many times, and I know that does create a little block where we have to exclude other people just to do that smaller number of items. But it means that we'll have dealt with those and that will understand the consequences on the broader whole, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to you, Councillor Wilson? That's how I think I will run it.
Yes, Mayor Paula, I just had a question for clarity. When I look at the PX, out of the about 10 items, I can only see 3 which have commercial sensitivity. The rest, particularly the service level cuts, I think probably could be in the public part of the agenda.
Yeah, I think we agree. We talked about that this morning. Lance, have you got a comment on that?
Some of those are tied up with contracts though, which we'd have to enter into some discussions with the provider.
All right.
Are you able to, are there any that can be bought, in your professional opinion, are there any that could be bought into open? Or are any of these able to be brought into open once we have discussed them in PX?
If it helps the Chief Executive, I'm feeling the first three could stay in PX, but I would have thought all the others, I'm struggling to understand the commercial sensitivity of those.
There's other sensitivities around those organisations and how it might affect them procuring other funds or loss of confidence in what they run from other sources.
Mayor Paula, I'm just making the obvious observation, having had the chance of looking at both my very capable colleague, the Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Sarah's amendments and my own. The one common thread is actually the rejection, the entire rejection of each of those service level cuts. Thus leaves me with the pondering thought, how could that be damaging when we're clearly saying we're not doing it?
Well, I guess, yeah, I take your point. I guess the not doing it part was something that was indicated in a workshop, therefore it hasn't actually been tested by the vote. It's just theoretical.
You haven't voted on it yet, but and you see in one of the recommendations is that
24 hours.
we can release information afterwards.
Thank you.
Once that discussion, that vote's been had. Yeah.
Right, so thank you for that, if I may, Mayor Paula, thank you for that clarity. So we're saying that in fact today that will be released. If we vote on it, it will be made available today, is that?
Yeah, except those ones that are...
Correct. There will be a little delay because in some of these, we'll have to have staff to just have a quick phone call to the parties involved, just so they get a heads up so that they're not surprised by reading something in the media or online before we've had so we've got all that planned. Yep. If you happen to vote in a particular way.
Right. I guess, Mayor Paula, we're lucky to know not only have we had a bit of a chat, but we've also been pre-circulated a whole lot of motions that clearly show we're rejecting that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And I think we can talk, once we've been in PX, you and I think we can talk in the round about why we've done that when we do our complete wrap-up of what's in and what's out, because I think that's a legitimate matter of public interest, that things were brought to us of a certain nature, and for a variety of reasons we decided not to have those.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's just about sequencing.
Thank you, Mayor Paula.
If I haven't done the sequencing right by the end of the day and you feel there's something astray, then come back at me and we'll see what we can do at that point. Is that reasonable? Let me just go back into the open agenda, sorry.
And Councillor Wilson, just a question for governance, both the motion and or any motions that are on the table or amendments, as Councillor Wilson said, those levels of service cuts are not included, so we're not actually going to be voting on them, we're just ignoring them. Does that change anything?
We're discussing them in PX.
You still have to consider them.
Okay.
So you're sort of jumping ahead. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So my advice would
somebody
be
last minute could
you
raise it
consider them
anyway.
and then you vote on them in PX, come out of PX, and then actually, if they have been discarded, then the issue goes away. But we just need to make the courtesy contact of the organisations involved,
Okay.
so that they know that it was discussed, but this was the decision of council.
Okay, all right, yep.
Okay, a little bit messy, as I said, but Sarah?
Thank you. I gave some pre-warning that I'd like to move that we bring the capital project list into public, except for some I think there were several areas that would be redacted to
Yes,
due to the commercial
I understand,
sensitivity. So,
James, that that can happen.
Yeah.
James, yeah.
yeah,
thank
so just noting that, but I'll do that in the confirmation agenda.
Okay, excellent.
Well, I have one further question, if I, or an observation, and then maybe staff could provide a commentary. I note I'm sitting here today with a run sheet that's sitting out, easily seen by our technology, and it actually has all of the confidential stuff. And so I'm just asking, including each of the quantums, I'm asking if that is best practice.
It is one of the reasons why we had them placed where they were, so that they weren't quite picked up, and that we were very careful to not put them in the public pickup zones, like when we get people to pick up the iPads.
Okay.
I think
Because we
you
were trying to make it easier for members
Sure.
as we move through items. It's a
I
catch.
actually believe, just in terms of safety and how much impact can be caused by something getting into the public arena that shouldn't, I think we need to review that in future and maybe just put a note in there to refer to diligent or an email, because anyone, you know, when we're getting our cups of teas and so forth, anyone can pick up anything off our desks, and we're aware of that, of course. So I think that's a good point, Ewan.
I have to say, Mayor Paul, it wasn't mine. A much cleverer member of one of my colleagues pointed it out to me, so I just thought I would.
Oh, well, congratulations, whoever that was.
I can't take credit.
Point well made. All right, let's go into the, just get the contents. There are no apologies, everyone.
There is apologies.
Who?
Councillor Moko,
Oh, yes.
Councillor Malena, and Councillor Kesha's full apologies.
Melena's here,
Early departure.
early departure. Moko is, yes, he's in Wellington, I understand,
He was going to zoom in.
and he's going to zoom in occasionally. And who else did you say?
Councillor Kesh
And Kesh.
is absent.
Cool. And sorry, you're slightly a blur because I'm trialling my new glasses, and so just learning where you're in focus and where you're not. So, you know, sure.
It is just a clarification under standing orders. If a member chooses to zoom in only for a little bit, and they're not there for the full debate discussion on an item, I'm just fascinated to hear whether or not they're actually under our standing orders permitted to vote on an item, if that could just be explained to me.
Yeah, that's also a very good question, and I know with your commissioner training, that would have been one of the elements that you came across.
Right.
And the answer is if they are in the room and feel that they are comfortable to make the decision. Generally, when it reaches debate and somebody comes in during the debate, our suggestion would be that they would not take place, but if that person feels they have all of the information required to make an informed decision, they could vote on the matter.
If I may ask an additional question through you, Mayor Paula. So that would also mean, although they haven't heard the entire debate, they simply zoom in for a decision point, can vote a particular way, and then disappear again. Thank you.
Is it? Yeah, that might be something worth looking at, and from a legal perspective again at some stage, because I know where Ewan's coming from on that. I know as part of the commissioner training, they talk about your needing to be in the conversation. But I just have to say, with this one, we've had multiple exposures to the information over time, including a workshop. Not everyone was at the workshop, of course, a different selection of people. And it is your responsibility, sadly, to make sure that you are across the detail, I guess, Ewan. But obviously, and when that thing came from Parliament about being able to be remote, the point I was making about where you can coming in person, and goodness, we really appreciate the efforts that Sarah makes to be here for important meetings, we really do. Because you do hear that debate and that cut and thrust of other people's thinking as well, which I think is incredibly useful for the most important decisions that we make. Anyway, we are at that point appoint you in, so you'll accept the advice of governance for today. And we confer, so I move that the apologies be accepted, please. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Van Oosten, all in favour? Opposed? Confirmation of the agenda. Also move, Deputy Mayor. Oh. Okay, cool.
An amendment then?
Is it an amendment
Or
or an
if you're
inclusion?
happy to move alongside of, how do we do this? Confirmation agenda plus moving the
Vote.
capital project list into,
Attachment 1 of the public excluded annual plan report into the open session.
yeah, except for the.
Noting with some redactions.
Yeah.
Perfect. And it will be included as an appendix to the minutes as well.
Yeah, so to circulate, to save people the hassle of going between public excluded, and it would be nice to have that list of those maybe printed for us with the redactions in place, of course, so that we can have them at the side of us while we're making our decisions. And of course, anything that's open information needs to be shared with members of the public who may have an interest in this as well. Is that okay? So if we can
Working
make
on
that
that.
happen or append it to the diligent, and we can refresh whatever needs to happen so that it is actually genuinely accessible, that would be good.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sarah. With that amendment, with that in mind, I move. Councillor Thompson seconds. All in favour? Okay, are there any declarations of interest on matters before us today? No, there being none. And we're not having a public forum at this point, because when we come to talking about the engagement and the consultation with the public, we'll be providing public forum opportunities for the public at that time, when they can fully discuss how they feel about the draft plan. So that being it, we'll move on to the item 6, which is the annual draft plan draft budget. We're going to... Huh? Oh, sorry. Okay, item 5. Yes, confirmation of the minutes. I might miss a few things today with these. I might have to put my reading glasses back on. Confirmation of the minutes. Please also move. Councillor Hamilton seconds. All in favour? It's carried. Now we're going to go into the staff. We're going to step through, led by Lance at this point in time, the annual plan. We'll have some questions on that. We'll then look at the recommendations, so you have them in your mind, and then we're going to move into public excluded before we take those resolutions. But the questioning happens now, if I make that distinction. Cool.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. As requested, staff have come back with just under $6 million of options for improving the balancing the books figure for 2023. The majority of these, which is around about 5 million, just over 5 million, are reducing operating expenditure, and you'll see in your agendas the remainders some considerations around increasing operating revenue. Obviously, you know, revenue helps the balancing the books as well as reducing operating expenditure. Just you'll be well aware, and we had a briefing last week, that just to remember that the savings that we're putting forward for consideration today come on top of the just under 7 million, which was agreed at the last meeting, which we just passed the minutes for, and also the $11 million of efficiency savings that are already baked into the 10-year plan as CE savings, which the organisations are required to find in 23-24. So in my view, there's very little low-hanging fruit left, and also there's quite often a tension between the different savings initiatives, and we've tried to look right across the council within the 6 million and get a balance. For example, one of the measures in the report today for discussion is saving some money on our IT automation budget, which can have some effect at the pace which we can deliver more efficient processes, which can deliver savings as well. But obviously, as we discussed in the briefing the other week, it's not all the budget for that, and there were some good questions around how much of the budgets were being put forward for reductions. And looking for savings, we took particular note of some of the comments at the 2nd of March council meeting around the human costs, such as consultants, contractors, and then our own personnel payroll. That's reflected in a number of the options that we've put forward in different ways. But also the flip side of this is that people deliver services and to the community. So reductions around these sorts of things, as you can see, will generally have an effect on levels of service, either directly or probably something you need to be aware of is indirectly. But I just want to reiterate, we did look for, I set the GMs a target to look for a spread across the council around consultants, contractors, professional services, and also personnel. Obviously, we took you through those last week. There was varying opinions. There was some consensus on things which will come out in the discussion and the debate today. And there was a request for additional information, which I think Councillor Taylor asked for, which we've put into the public excluded part of the report. And Mayor Paula also invited elected members to put forward any other areas of interest that they had. My understanding is that the team haven't received any others since then, apart from Councillor Sarah just talking about the capital program and some of the things which may be able to be put into, pulling it forward into open instead of public excluded, which you've just done previously. The other late addition, the information there was some discussion at the back end of the briefing, was really around something that Mayor Paula highlighted in her opening comments for the meeting. It was just around community engagement options, and we've put a number of options there, and hopefully we've put the considerations of each option in there and also the costs involved. And obviously we've put in, staff time, but also the external costs, if there are external costs as well. And the team can talk you through that in more detail, probably at the back end of the meeting, once you've made your decisions around the financial side of things and what actually goes into the draft annual plan that we do then consult on or engage on. So, and I think there's 4 options there, which you've probably had a look at, and we're very interested to get a decision on that today so the team can get on and go ahead with getting the draft annual plan out and actually engaging with the community in the appropriate way. So GMs are here to answer any questions. Myself, obviously, we've got other staff as well, and Tracy and James and Julia are sort of driving the process. Tracy and David are the financial people, and as I said, there's other staff who can answer any particular nuanced questions you've got around any of the proposed reductions or increases in revenue. So I'll leave it there, Mayor Paula, and happy to start, get the team to start working through the report.
Oh, thank you. Any questions on that? Yeah.
I guess my first question was, I did ask for, and I haven't been able to find it, and maybe I haven't looked as closely as I needed to. I did specifically ask what the payroll variance was for the previous financial year, because, and I asked for that in the workshop. And I also asked for a detailed analysis of the comms and marketing budget for the whole organisation. Now, I think there's some information on that, but in terms of the first part, I don't know if I've missed it.
The second part, yes, it's at the back there.
Yeah,
I know there's quite a bit of information there, and we tried to give it that as comprehensive as possible without confusing people. But obviously, there's different parts to that across the council, and there's different parts to communications, marketing, and engagement. There are actually differences to those. So we've tried to split those out, and hopefully, councillors can actually work their way through that. The first part, I'll have to refer to either David or Tracy on that.
Thank you.
We'll come back to you, Councillor Ewan.
Thank you.
So with that in mind, aware of councillors' feedback and so on, so focusing on the key matters would be really good, James, thank you.
Kia ora koutou. As Mayor Paula said, I will take the report as read, but I'll just give a quick reminder of kind of how we got to where we are. So that it started with a 2 million projected deficit for the 23-24 year in the long-term plan for year 3. That had gone out to 12 million by the time we set the annual plan last year, and sort of starting point for this annual plan was a 35 million deficit because of the various sort of factors at play in the world at the moment, high inflation, high interest rates, etc. You'll be aware that last week we received confirmation that we've been successful in our bid for better off funding, 14.65 million from the DIA. About 11 million of that sort of nets off against our balancing the books deficit, which brings us back to 24 million, and we identified savings of just under 7 million that council approved at the last meeting earlier this month, which brings the balancing the books deficit back to 17 million. And the motion that we're responding to today is for a further 6 million, which would bring the balancing the books deficit to 11 million, which is 1 million sort of better off, as it were, than we were projecting this time last year in the annual plan. So with that in mind, we've got, I believe it's 13 measures before you today in the open part of the meeting, and they add up to just under 2.5 million, and then a further sort of set of measures in the closed part of the meeting, the publicly excluded part, which we'll come to later. As Lance said, all of the measures we talked you through and discussed at some length in the briefing last week, so I won't go through them sort of line by line. As Lance said, we deliberately tried to split them sort of across the whole business, looking at all areas of the business, and also with a particular focus on what do we spend on consultants and contractors and so on, in line with the questioning last time. So we're all ready to answer any questions you have on any of the individual measures, but I won't list them all here.
Cool, thank you. And bear with me because my card's not working at the moment, and I pulled it in to try and reset it and made it worse. I pulled it in, pulled it out and pulled it back in. So I just need to refer to the discussion board behind me, so if I'm, there's no deliberate missing of anyone, it'll just be that. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. My question is to the Chief Executive, in line with my agreement that I will ask questions directly to the Chief Executive rather than to staff, as apparently I can sometimes be somewhat inquisitorial or been accused of interrogating. So this is the new Ewan. Yeah, because I'd hate to intimidate anyone. Mr. Chief Executive, I'm noting that our OPEX spend in 2016 was $232 million odd, and our spend in the 2022 financial year in OPEX is significantly more. In fact, $462 million. It's a 99% increase. My question is, how has that increase broadly come about?
I'm going to get Tracy to answer that, so I'll get her to run us through. So,
Councillor Wilson, just to answer your question that you just had before, we were favourable to budget last year according to the annual plan by $328,000.
I'm sorry, is that in...
In personnel, so you asked what the variance was in personnel last year in the annual report, and it was $328,000 difference from budget.
And my understanding is we had projected a variance of $1 million that we were going to that
for personnel.
that the payroll was 100 million, and that we assumed because of unfilled vacancies,
Yep.
that we would spend $1 million less of that, and
The vacancy factor.
yep.
Yep.
And so you're saying, in fact, in that year, we the variance was only 328,000.
Correct.
Right.
So when we
I'm
set,
struggling with the
yeah.
maths there.
So when we set the vacancy factor, and as Tracy explained, I think at the 2nd of March meeting, it might have been at the briefing, we've had a higher figure previously, and we've been reducing that because of a couple of things. It can drive bad behaviour where managers sit on vacancies and that sort of things because we've got to meet a target, and then that puts programs behind, puts other staff under pressure and that sort of thing. And what we've been doing is we've actually been getting better at the time that we replace our staff. So it's a two-way thing that we want to make sure we deliver our programs, and that when we have turnover, that people, when we recruit, it's not taking like 3 or 4 months. It's actually taking, I think we're down to 39 days now on average, David, 38, 39 days, so that we can deliver on our promises to the community. So when we set the figure, look, and we'll be really honest, it's not an exact science. Sometimes we'll be favourable on that, sometimes we'll be unfavourable, but we'll do our best to meet that target where we can without perverse outcomes.
Am I correct in saying that, or thinking that the 328,000, what would then be a favourable variance because we haven't spent that money? Did fulfilling any of those jobs that were unfulfilled, did we rely on consultants and contractors to achieve that?
Well, what we do, yes, partly. So if we have staff leave and there's crucial projects and we are struggling to recruit, and it has been tough over the last couple of years with the market we've had, is that on occasions we will get in either a contracted person, a person from a consultancy, or a sole trader type person who can come in and that sort of thing, which is then reflected in our consultants line or professional services, and that's reported through to the Finance Committee. So you'll see variances in our staff personnel, direct personnel costs, and then you'll see a different variance in the budgeted consultants or professional services line.
Me Pora, I can't seem to make any further progress. I'm still very bewildered by the figures, but they are what they are. Maybe if I could just have an answer to the first question that I asked the Chief Executive regarding the fact that since 2016 to 2022, our OPEX spend has increased by 100%, and I'm just trying to get my head around how that happened.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. So did you also have a note of the revenue spend that we get as well? So just to take that into consideration, quite a few things have happened obviously over that time. So the city itself has grown. We have more streets, and more areas to obviously then look after. With that obviously comes an increase in your rates revenue, because we then obviously have those ratepayers in those houses. We've also had quite a substantial amount of grants come through from the government, which also comes into revenue, and obviously we then have to do that work, which is salaries and consultants and the likes for the work programs to match that off.
Thank you.
Give you clarity at this point in time, what, because I'm trying to understand the original line of questioning. You're confused about the maths because it might be helpful to us all.
Yeah, because at one stage we had roughly 120 jobs unfulfilled, and then we had 90 jobs unfulfilled, and I had on the back of an envelope gone, well, that's $5.8 million of jobs that payroll that we didn't have to pay out. And now I've been told, no. When I look at last year, there was only a variance of 328. And so we've just been either incredibly efficient in filling these vacancies that have only ever been very short term, or we've relied on filling them from consultants and contractors, which is
So
a different
staff
pool.
do-
If I may, that last bit, what you just said is exactly on the money. So we are turning it over, so, and that whole 120 to the 90, they're rolling, obviously in different types of vacancies, and in some cases we are backfilling them with consultants to offset it. So what you just said at that last point is exactly right. There's a, like, as Lance said, there's a combination of how we fulfil those roles, so. Yep.
Information?
Oh, just one simple one is, so in the financial year that relates to the 328,000, what was the actual budget for contractors and consultants, and what did we actually spend? Because, Mayor Paula, what I've realised is I now need to know that to get an understanding of how we've managed the money, right? Because I was asking what I thought was the right question, but I needed to be asking a slightly different nuanced question to get the accurate
So
information.
let's have a response on that, Lance.
I won't be able to give you the detail of consultants and contractors from the annual report, but I will be able to, I'll go and find it for you.
Okay, so it'll be found
Yeah,
for you?
just absolutely, just in terms of what did we project
Yeah,
and budgeted for, and what did we spend?
across both classes.
Can I just make a comment that we actually manage to the bottom line? So we actually want to get the work program done. That's agreed by council, and then we have to be agile about how we do that at times. And in a challenging market for particular positions, not all positions, then we do have to be agile, and we do have different ways of doing that so that we can actually get the work done. And we do have obligations, like some of the things that Tracy talked about with the funding we've got from outside sources and government, that and we had some through COVID and HIF loans and what have you. We actually have contractual obligations to actually do the work, and same with Waka Kotahi and that sort of thing. So, so my GMs actually manage the bottom line, and then those variances are reported through to the Finance Committee on those cost elements.
So that's the whole mantra of the bottom line approach rather than each budget line. So as long as it falls within the overall bottom line envelope, the actual...
Well, we're still, notwithstanding the fact that we're still eking out what's the best way to do that, and what's the way to be more efficient going forward, and so that's layered in there as well, and that's why there's $11 million of CE savings to put the heat on me and my team to actually do that.
Which is the Better Future task force that you're working on.
Yeah, Future Fit, yeah, which I'll
Future
talk
Fit,
to
sorry.
council about that in more detail next week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And my understanding from that last question from me is for that future fit, that's like the greater understanding that you're seeking through that process is likely to inform the long-term plan, or will be available for informing the long-term plan in terms of requirements for staff, etc.
Correct, but it's not just about staff structure, it's about actually how we operate.
Efficiency.
And it's about using technology, it's about procurement practices, it's a whole range of things. And we'll take elected members on that journey, and I'll explain it in a lot more detail. So there's some complexity to it, but you're right, Mayor Paula, it is a journey which will help us formulate or be part of the 10-year plan, because, you know, if Three Waters goes ahead as we understand it will at the moment, who knows what might happen in the next 4 weeks or 5 weeks, then, you know, this organisation is going to change quite significantly. We're losing 18 or 19% of our staff and a whole bunch of revenue as well, so, and assets. So it's going to be significant, the 10-year plan, and we actually have to reshape the organisation for the new world.
Mayor Paula, I just want to signal an intention, having heard that, it's somewhere in the agenda today, a resolution around future fit and the bottom line budgeting and governors, the governance team's interaction with that. But because it's absolutely linked with the annual plan process. But it's not material initially, but it's something that I intend to signal that I'd like to do at the end of this process
Sure.
today.
Sure.
Okay, cool.
And I, from what you say, Lance, my question is, I guess, that those efficiencies and whatever comes out of those changes will not only have a 1-year impact, but an impact across the next 3 years of the LTP or whatever. They'll be baked, that efficiency, whatever you get it from, will be baked in.
Correct.
To the
Look,
future.
the best, you know, for CE savings, the best CE savings are, as you say, Mayor Paula, efficiencies that are enduring. So it's not like a one-off windfall or a one-off thing. Yes, there will be those, as we know, but it's actually about looking at how are we, you know, that we're better, cheaper, faster, you know, if you want to put it in sort of a cliched sort of form, and that's enduring. So if we actually have an efficiency, say it's worth $500,000, then that actually goes across the 10-year plan, which ends up being $5 million over the 10 years.
Okay.
And that was the whole premise of the CE savings that we started the 10-year plan before last.
Councillor Van Oosten.
Are we in a position to be asking questions about the items that are on the list? Is that where we're at the moment?
And yes, so I'm taking, first of all was on the report, but yeah, I think it's probably good if we put up the recommendation, the staff recommendation, and the recommendation of councillors Wilson and Pike, just to have them up there, because those are the items that we have under consideration today to be a cut or not to be a cut. So if we could just have those there as a reminder, you have them in front of you, councillors, I think. They all have the Wilson Pike one as well? As emailed, so you have it there. And then let's talk about those particular items as well.
And the Deputy Mayor and Sarah's together? Because
Yeah, so we are in that question space.
All of that
So
together?
it's really important that you ask all your questions, because then we'll go to public exclude, do that a little bit, come back into the debate. And of course, in the debate, you will have, at that point, not this point, you will have the 5-minute debate time to cover off all your points. So, cool. So, Max, you've got some questions?
Look, just one to start us off, actually, and it's related to the topic of future fit, but particularly with the comment regarding the automation. And two things really about that. The first is what amount of budget is still left in to be able to work on that program, and secondly, what kind of impact will reducing it, and there is some commentary in the papers, I acknowledge, but it doesn't necessarily speak to the point about the impact it will have on the Future Fit program and the potential for council to be in the very best position to take us through to decisions in the long-term plan to be making the best of them. So comment from the CE, I guess.
Look, I might get Murray just to talk about, because there's figures in here, and then I think elected members, as you said at the briefing, said it'd be useful to know what the rest of the budget is and what can you achieve for that. So I might just get Murray to jump in here to answer your question and maybe what I've suggested as well.
Thank you.
Let's see if we can hear you from there, Murray. If not, we'll move you up front.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Look, this represents a quarter of the budget, so there's a further 1.5 million left to do automation. So what that means is that we're just slowing down our program to help us realise sustainable changes. So what this represents is that we're just not spending and we're just reducing our cost. That means we're actually slowing down our ability to achieve our CE cost savings. And sustainable change. Future Fit itself is really about achieving sustainable change. It's changing the way we work. What this is about is saying that it's about removing manual processes, and automation is about changing the way we work and the speed and efficiency at which we work. So this does have a material impact on that, but in order to save costs, what we're doing is saying, well, we can give up that and we'll prioritise our efforts around some core processes like procurement, like the automation of consenting.
I guess in terms of that, is it more of an internal gain, or is it something that residents will see the impact of and potentially gain the benefit from?
So the automation of process actually looks at the automation of our services as well. So how residents and citizens interface with us through portals and digital channels. So how we automate those services. So for instance, with consenting. So the experience and improving the customer experience that we have. So it's both an internal, a back office, and it's also an external facing improvement.
And in your mind, taking a quarter of the budget doesn't stop the program, but it slows it down, and then the benefits to our community will be seen at a later date.
Correct.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor Paula.
Okay, cool. Sorry. Councillor Hutt.
Who could I ask some questions of about the Metrospatial and Access Hamilton cuts?
Yeah, ask them. Everyone's in the room, so ask and we'll get the right person to answer the question.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Just looking through the list of items, I was just wondering, just wanting to clarify my understanding that there's no other specific strategies that are listed as an item having a budget cut. Is that correct?
James. Sorry, I'll put you on the spot there.
Metrospatial and Access Hamilton are just like two strategies of council, and everything else I would hope on the list, you know, anything we were doing I would hope was related to a strategy, but there's no other actual strategies listed here as having a budget directly cut.
That's correct.
Okay. In terms of the Metrospatial plan, my understanding of the initial stages of that are really kind of doing Access Hamilton and doing it well. Perhaps one might say doing it on steroids, for want of a better metaphor. Just the fact that we're reducing the expenditure of both of them, I was just wondering, is that a particular liability to both of those strategies?
I think a couple of the general managers are
Sure.
better placed to comment.
So MSP and Access Hamilton are related, but not in the way that you've just indicated. Like
Okay.
the funding for the MSP is to progress business cases for some of our long-term transformational interventions. Separate to that, is Access Hamilton and the strategy and the work that we're doing in the 1 to 3 years and 1 to 10 in terms of mode shift, walking and cycling. So the strategy dollars are for separate outcomes.
Yeah, okay. In terms of implementation and planning for Access Hamilton, I was just wondering if you could tell me what that looked like in terms of what will we not be doing?
So through the Access Hamilton Action Plan Working Group will clearly define the program of work. So that is we've yet to have our first meeting on that. But one of the items that we would look to not deliver is some of the car parking area management plans that would fall under that program of work. There are a number of areas that have been identified. It just means that we won't be able to deliver them all, or we'll limit the delivery of those as an example of the impact of that reduction.
The car parking management plans, were they going to bring in revenue to council?
The car parking area plans were going to define how we would implement the Hamilton parking policy that was approved 9th of August last year, and part of that policy has a revenue determination in it and how as a city we manage that. Noting that in 23-24 there is a look at how we manage some of our car parking in terms of our CBD and city fringe parking, which was part of the annual long-term plan conversation.
But you don't have a dollar figure for how much that could be giving us in revenue?
No. It's specific on the areas. Some won't bring in revenue, but some could, dependent on where elected members choose to take those plans.
Okay. Maybe question for Chris then, just back on Metro Spatial. What, I guess, is the risk in terms of those longer term business cases and the, wider aspirations of mode shift in terms of public transport? What's the potential delay there if we don't do this work this year?
It's really just a timing issue. So the reduced funding will mean that we just can't go quite as fast in completing some of those business cases. But those business cases will be setting up funding for future years. Like in the meantime, the Access Hamilton strategy and the things that we're doing there are really aligned with the direction of the MSP. So we're not going to lose out in terms of doing the right things in the next 1 to 3 years. It's just getting the business case prepared for our future in terms of our rapid bus transit units. So it'll be nice to go at pace. We just won't be able to go so fast. So
I know that some of the capital projects that's been brought into public, those are ones that we don't think we can deliver in this or the annual plan year. But in terms of I guess setting up the funding for Metro Spatial, are we missing out on funding opportunities by putting that work off?
when you say putting the work off, you mean the MSP funding?
Yeah.
No, I don't think we'll be missing out. We'll still be interacting fully in all the funding rounds and trying to set that funding up and have every opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
I think my question, sorry, I was jumping around a bit, but just going back to the automation one, question was, I understand obviously reducing that budget will slow down the progress on that. To what extent does it reduce your confidence, Lance, in meeting the 11 million of CE savings?
It'll be more challenging. Like, I can't give you a percentage or anything like that. We haven't done the financial modelling around it, so we're not quite at that stage, but it will be challenging. But I'm confident with the program that we've got going around Future Fit, which I'll talk to you guys about next week, that we've got a good trajectory to get the enduring efficiency savings across the organisation. And look, some of those will get realised faster than others. And sometimes automation, as we all know, it can be quick or it can be slow because there's a whole lot of design and stuff like that. And I think RFID, you know, the radio frequency ID in libraries that we put in 3 or 4 years ago, I think, Leanne, that, you know, that had like a 1-year planning involved in that, and that's, you know, had significant cost optimisation and savings. So, look, I can't give you a figure on that, but it will make the 11 million CE savings challenging, but my team's up for it.
Okay. And would you come back to us, say, in the Finance Committee if it was going to make the difference, you know, that you were seeing that it was significantly hampering your ability to make those more sustainable efficiency savings?
Yes, as we would with anything where, you know, time goes on and there's outside influences and things happen, and also what happens internally too. So we'd definitely come back and let you know if there's challenges around that. You'll see it in the figures anyway that come forward around variances and things like that. If we're going really well or we're not going so well. But obviously, you know, we give heads ups, and we'd do that through the Risk and Assurance Committee too.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Cool. Are there any further questions on the report or on the items? We may just put the motions up just so we can see them, and just make sure that you've seen both and how they differ. But we are not going to vote on those at the moment. We're going to hold them back till we've done the public excluded bit. But you can ask questions. So can you put them up for me, please? I think it's important straight up to be transparent about what's proposed and what the changes of the... So the motion is by Councillor Wilson and Councillor Pike. The staff recommendation has not been put, so this is the only one on the table. But we have been transparent enough to include the exclusions, so you can see the difference.
And I just want to clarify, because I have received an email that, different from last night's one that I circulated to everybody, the Metro Spatial Plan reduction is voted on the first one, and the Access Hamilton one yeah, because there's a couple changes happening at the same time.
No, I would like to put them up first, if you don't mind. Let's put them up so we can see them, and then you can talk about the elements.
So there's been no changes from mine.
So before we move to the other thinking. Yeah.
Yes,
So,
could we
yeah,
have...
Yeah, we'll just take a 5-minute adjournment just to line these up. Councillor O'Leary, we're just going to take a 5-minute adjournment. Yes, thank you. We'll do it before you start talking. Thanks. Yeah. Sometimes you got to go through the murky water to get to the end of the swamp, and here we are. So it's cool. We all know that nothing's straightforward in council politics, but let's, actually, we do have a process, so I do want to get it all up in front of you so that everybody can visually see exactly how we're going to step through it. So the Councillor Wilson, Councillor Pike, a motion, and you can see some things are scratched out of it because they're not included in that motion. Then if we scroll down, there's additional motion from Councillors Wilson and Councillors Pike that include a couple of the items from above, but because there's also an amendment by Deputy Mayor O'Leary and Councillor Thompson on those same matters, we've taken them out as separate, right? So they're not included in the top because they're separately included in one or other, either the motion or the amendment below. And there's just been a little, yeah, so that's just been a little bit moving, but that's the way it is now. Sarah, you happy with that?
Then Access Hamilton and Metro, as it is, will have to be taken separately, won't they?
Yeah, that's what we're doing. That's,
No, separately again.
no,
Because we,
scroll down a bit.
Yes. Yes.
There's another one below.
because we
Scroll down a
wouldn't.
bit, please, Amy.
No, there isn't anymore.
Oh, it's because you leave it.
Yeah, sorry, for clarity, the reason that you see the Metro Spatial Plan in Councillor Wilson's and Councillor Pike. Oh, okay.
Because you're,
Otherwise we're just presenting
because you're now
the edit.
proposing no
We
change.
just vote, yeah.
Because you can,
We just,
Excellent.
yeah.
Okay, everybody else clear, because I really want everyone to understand.
So we just.
When the time comes, we'll be debating them separately?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Okay, so at the moment though, we're not debating at all, we're just in questions about any of those items. So if you want to question any of that, now's the time to raise your question, and then we're going to deal with public excluded, but we need a 10-minute tea time to reset technology. So, any questions on that? Oh, can't see any? No. So, great clarity, brilliant. Yeah, no, and that's what I appreciate, the work that was done to put these together collegially yesterday, so I do appreciate that. We're going to move out of open into public excluded, but we're going to take a tea break till 10:02 because we're having some technology glitches that need resetting, or voting will become problematic. So we'll take a tea break till 10:02, then we'll go into public excluded, which I'm expecting, Stephen, to take about half an hour, and then we're back into the open for the substantive, pulling everything together.
we could,
Did I just jinx the PX?
we could just move to public excluded now, and that'll give us an extra time to fluff around and then we'll break.
Right,
immediately.
we've decided something else now, just because I love to be flexible. We're going to go into PX right now. We're
And
going
then
to do our bizzo and PX, then we're going to have a tea break while they sort out the technology so we can do some voting later. And
Just the resolution to move into PX is
yeah,
all I
so
would like
we've
to do
moved,
now.
yeah, resolution to move into PX, please. Either which way, Stephen, it just means that we're out of, for about 40 minutes, we're not available publicly. Thank you.
Move. Paula.
So we're just moving into PX, I move that we move into PX. Councillor Van Oosten seconds is all in favour. Aye.
Tea break.
And now we ask the hordes to leave.